Micturition. What is this micturition? Before going to talk about that, what is micturition? You know, after once the urine gets formed in the nephrons, the hypertonic, it reaches to the calyces, pelvis and the ureters. What are these ureters? Roughly they'll measure about 25 to 30 centimeters in length, the wide tubes running posteriorly, and they will open into the urinary bladder. And you know, urinary bladder is a sac-like distensible, it is going to distend. And this sac is the one where the urine gets stored temporarily, not permanently guys, temporarily. Urine is stored temporarily in the urinary bladder, and that leads into urethra, and that urethra will leads out through the urethral opening. We can just call it as a urethral opening guys, here it is. It's a urethral opening. This urethra is a short tube which you are observing, which starts from the internal urethral opening to external urethral opening. And this urethra in males is called as a urinogenital duct because it's a common passage for both the semen and the urine in males. And it is lengthier, which opens at the tip of the penis. Whereas in the females, the urethra is the one where is only meant for the passage of urine but not for the ova, because the oviducts will open separately. And urethra is meant as a urinogenital duct only in males, as same as like frog, just recollect that. In frog also the same scenario. And here the urethra, as I said, it's starting from the case of a internal opening to the external opening is a short tube. It's guarded by the sphincters. You know, sphincters are nothing but the modification of the smooth muscles. But which is smooth, which is skeletal, I'll tell you here. So, this internal urethral opening is guarded by the sphincter called as internal urethral sphincter. And this sphincter is a modification of smooth muscles. You know, well, if it is a smooth muscle, it is involuntary obviously. Smooth muscles are involuntary, whereas skeletal muscles are voluntary. And whereas external urethral sphincter is the modification of, though I didn't wrote on the board, just note it down guys. External urethral sphincter is the one which is the one modified by the skeletal muscle. So, it's a voluntary. Internal urethral sphincter is involuntary, external urethral sphincter is voluntary. These sphincters will regulate the flow of urine. So, from the nephrons of the kidney, ureters, urinary bladder and the urethra. And what is micturition process? The happiest process. Let's discuss what is this happiest process. Okay, fine, here the sequence I showed you here. Once the bladder gets filled up with urine, the person will get the when the bladder gets it's storing of urine, even the people who have a idea of scientific background, they'll say that my bladder got filled. And when the bladder, as I said, is a distensible sac-like structure, and this distensible sac-like structure, what happens means, you know that urinary bladder is also made up of with muscles, smooth muscles. When the bladder is distending, the smooth muscles and the stretch receptors over there in the urinary bladder, they'll send the signals to the central nervous system. And central nervous system, after bladder got filled, the central nervous system in turn will will sense the actions. It sends the reflex actions in order to make the smooth muscle present in the wall of urinary bladder to get contract. The bladder should get contract and sphincters should get relaxed, otherwise it will burst out. The bladder should get contract so that it will pour out the filled urine, and the sphincters should get relaxed. As I said, is a involuntary and this is voluntary. And the process of, this is a voluntary process in adults, though is said voluntary, it is a voluntary process in adults and involuntary process in the case of the children. That's why children will pass the urine without their knowledge. And here the urinary bladder stretch receptors, when they send here the signals to the central nervous system in turn send the message to the urinary bladder wall to get contract and sphincters got relaxed, and then the person will get the desire of urination. The process of release of urine out is called as micturition. It is a reflex action. I said it is the happiest process, everyone had experienced that, I don't need to say much about it. So micturition, release of urine out. And here, as I keeps on saying, the person, though 180 liters will form per day, 99% gets reabsorbed, 1 to 1.5 liters of urine will be excreted out. And here I said several times that based on the amount of water intake and the weather over there and the metabolic conditions of the person, the urine rate will going to be differ from one another. Don't bother about like that, and don't cry like gorilla saying that it's already 1.5 liters exceeded is some disease. No, it depends upon the weather conditions, it depends upon the intake of the water, it depends upon your metabolic activities. It's not mandatory, but it's not exceed much. Because in diuresis disease, that is called as diabetes insipidus, the person will releases more amount of urine. That's a disease where around like 15 liters per day. Then you'll doubt it. If it is like always a care of washrooms, then you want to be in doubt. So that is a metabolic disorder. Coming to the urine is yellow color. Yellow color is due to the presence of urochrome. From where the urochrome will come? Is due to the breakdown of hemoglobin. You know, RBC's lifespan is 120 days. After that, it is destructed, and that pigment is helpful in the formation of the color of the urine, the light yellow. And it is slightly acidic with pH of 6. Slightly acidic the urine is. And characteristic odor, I don't need to say that. Once the urine got discharged due to the case of this oxidation and the nitrogen gets vaporized, it gives a foul smell, odor. And in this urine, around 25 to 30 grams of urea is going to be excreted out per day. In this volume of urine, the amount of urea, because in the urine not only urea, even ammonia is present, uric acid is present, small amounts of other components also present. But as the major excretory product, for example, like if we talk about in the urine, 95% is water itself and 2% is of urea and remaining all of 3%. And though 95% is water, I said several times, water has no usable energy. We won't give the credit to water over there, though water play a key role in all of them. Here, as urea is 2%, we're calling them as ureotelic animals. We are ureotelic animals. And other components also present in the case of the urine. Okay. And you know, urine test will say several times. It is the clinical assessment for clinical diagnosis of so many metabolic disorders. The urine is going to be used. It is one of the conventional process, no doubt. Traditionally, we are using from so many years, from decades or centuries, we can say that. The urine is used in the assessment, clinical diagnosis of so many disorders. And for that, we'll go with one. Even pregnancy test also can be done with the case of the help of urine. And even here, the one which is mentioned in the NCERT book, and it's a previous NEET question 2, that the presence of glucose in urine is called as glycosuria. Urea means urine. The presence of glucose in the urine, sweet urine, what we'll call it as. And the presence of ketonuria, ketone bodies in the urine. That is the one, the indication of the disease called as diabetes mellitus. Diabetes, you know, India is the capital of the world in diabetes. I hope you know well. Here it is. The majority of the diabetic patients in the world is from India contribution. So it's the capital of diabetes. Okay, so the presence of glucose and the ketone bodies in the urine is the indication of diabetes mellitus. Not only that, many metabolic disorders you can come across. Even when you are in starvation, if you are not taking food for the past some time moment, your urine also possesses ketone bodies and without urea. So, based on the urine composition, we can assess and we come to know several disorders and all. I hope you enjoyed one of the enjoyable process, like a happiest phenomenon of releasing the urine out, micturition, a reflex action. Role of other organs in the excretion. You know, kidneys are the major organs of excretion. Other than kidneys, other organs also play a role in the elimination of these excretory products, guys. Let's see what are those. The one is the lungs. You know, lungs are the respiratory organs and they eliminate the carbon dioxide which is piled up in our body, the excess carbon dioxide. Along with the carbon dioxide, water content, you know, the end product of respiration is also the water vapor. Water will be released, and you might have studied in your lower section saying that dry seeds, taking dry seeds and the germinating seeds and see that water content in that. Okay, so water and the excess carbon dioxide is eliminated. In the new NCRT book, it had been changed that, revised NCRT, be careful, here it is. They said that the amount of carbon dioxide released out is 200 ml per minute. This is about the lungs. So, lungs are involved in that. Liver. You know, liver is the largest digestive gland. It secretes the bile juice in which the bile pigments are present and which is responsible for the color of the fecal matter, what we said, the bilirubin, biliverdin, and even cholesterol also. Cholesterol is also the site where the liver, it is synthesized in the liver. And the excess of all these are removed out, degraded steroid hormones and vitamins and the drugs, they are eliminated out. So, this is about the case of the liver in what they are excreting out. Moving on to the skin, you know, in skin, in mammalian skin, it's characterized by the two glands. One is the sweat glands, other is the sebaceous glands. Sweat glands. Sweat money, I don't need to say that, it eliminates the water, NaCl, salts, नमकीन होती है, sweat at the same time चिपचिपाहट से होते हैं. क्यों चिपचिपाहट से? NaCl, urea and lactic acid, and the badbu, I mean the sweat is going to aroma, I mean not aroma actually, the odor is going to differ from one with other because of the composition of urea. So, in the sweat, NaCl, small amounts of urea and the lactic acid. And you know well, the next, sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands are the oil glands. You can come across only these in mammals, and these are oil glands which secrete oil at the sebum, which make your skin smoother. And this excrete, I mean eliminates out the sterols, hydrocarbons and waxes. So, this is about, and very strange question, it given as a question mark in NCRT too, that even your saliva also secrete the small amount of nitrogenous waste, guys. So, that's, by this we can say the other organs like the lungs, liver, the skin glands, sweat and sebaceous glands, even saliva is also contributing. But though the major excretory organs are kidneys itself. If you consider the sweat glands, the primary function of sweat gland is thermoregulation. Whenever it's too hot, sultry will start profusely sweating in order to cool down your body temperature. So, primary function is thermoregulation, secondary function is excretion. Liver also, you know, the major digestive gland it is, and lungs are the major respiratory organs helpful for the exchange of gases. Like that it goes on. So, this is about the role of other organs besides kidneys. Yeah, now it's the time to move on to the last topic of this system, the disorders of excretory system. What are those disorders? The very first one is uremia. Uremia means the presence of more urea in the blood. If the urea content in the blood is more, because I said that though we are ureotelic, though we are excreting urea, some amount of urea is stored in our interstitial fluid in order to balance the osmotic gradient. But if the level is too high, then we can say that there is a malfunctioning of the kidneys, somewhat kidneys got damaged. So, that is the indication. So, what is the rectification for that? We will see that here it is. Because uremia may lead to what? Maybe for what sake it is going to be. It is related with some metabolic disorders. And moving on to the hemodialysis, what will do if kidneys are failed to eliminate the urea out? What the condition? I mean, what is the remedy for it? What is the solution for it? The hemodialysis is a boon for majority of the uremic patients. As kidneys are failing, they are going to approach the hemodialysis. You might have heard the word. Irrespective of hemodialysis, in the normal terminology, the common people will call it as dialysis. Here they'll use a mission, artificial mission, a mission with tubes. Actually, they'll have a coiled tubes of cellophane tubes with the dialysing fluid is present surrounding it, and this fluid contains the same as the composition of the plasma except nitrogenous phase. That patient's blood is with nitrogenous phase in the plasma, but here that is devoid of the nitrogenous phase. So, we can call this as an artificial kidney. That hemodialyzer mission is called as an artificial kidney because it's eliminating the urea out, guys. What they'll do, how this technique, how this procedure is, they'll collect the blood from the convenient artery After adding heparin, you know heparin is an anticoagulant, it prevents the clotting of the blood. So as they're bringing out, they need to add heparin and they'll collect the blood from the arteries, and that blood is sent to the dialyzer machine, and this as it passes through the dialyzer machine, and as I said, the dialyzer machine is having the coil tubes and the fluid surrounding it. As I said, the fluid is without the nitrogenous phase, but the blood of that person, that patient is having the nitrogenous phase. So the nitrogenous phase will be eliminated from the higher concentration into the dialyzer fluid through that cellophane tube, the small porous tube. So by this, after that, the blood will become devoid of, without the nitrogenous phase, and that is again pumped back by adding anti-heparin. Before they'll add heparin, later they'll add anti-heparin, and they're going to inject back into the veins, the blood vessels which carry the blood towards the heart. So it's a boon for the majority of the uremic patients. So some people may be suffering with the case of this hypertension or diabetes mellitus. There is a problem in their kidney functioning too. And the renal failure, if the kidney got damaged, the kidneys got damaged, it may be either acute or chronic. Acute means suddenly they get damaged. Chronic means prolonged period of time there is a possibility of getting damage. Here it is. If maybe acute or the chronic, what is the ultimate phenomenon? Because hemodialysis is an expensive process, time taking process, so 3 to 4 hours, depends upon the person, depends upon the metabolic activities. They need to attend 2 to 3 days twice, depends upon the person. It's not mandatory, everyone should go in that. Based on the amount of formation of urea in their body, they need to consult the hospital, the doctor, and this is the expensive process and also the painful process. The person will suffer with the trauma. But here, the ultimate remedy for this, the kidney malfunctioning or the failure, is the kidney transplantation. Whom the kidney transplantation, in whom the persons they prefer? Generally, they'll prefer within the family members. If not possible, within the relatives, then other members. So there is a strict mandatory rules are there, legalized rules are there, framed by the government in order to not misuse that kidney transplantation phenomenon. You might have seen in the case of the movies or the hero will donate the kidney in order to get rid of from the financial issues. But in order to overcome this, maybe something hota hai piche, but just in order to avoid this misuses and all these things, there is a strict rules are there. When they'll go for this kidney transplantation, the blood group should match, the protein should match, the tissue matching should match. Otherwise, the immune system, though all is considered also, sometimes the immune system of that person, whomever received from a donor, it is going to reject. We'll call it as a tissue rejection, organ transplantation, tissue transplantation, it rejects. And T cells of our body will play, T lymphocytes of the body will play a role in the rejection of that transplanted organ. So everything should be mandatory, then only it will make that person to overcome the problem of the damaged kidneys. Hope you understood. And the renal calculi, in normal terminology we'll call it as kidney stones. How the kidney stones will form? It's not the stones which you consume along with the food will settle in the kidneys, no guys. Is it due to the salt-like structure called as calcium oxalates, or some crystallized salts will settle in the kidneys, and it creates a pain whenever because if it come in obstruct the pathway of the urine passage, it creates a pain while discharging the urine. So renal calculi, the kidney stones, is due to why? Because of less consumption of water or more consumption of calcium. So the spinach and tomato, dal, every time you used to take this, that also leads to calcium oxalate formation. Now and then is okay, oftenly is okay, but regularly there is a chance of that. That's why the nutritionists or some people who is having awareness of this also suggest you not to go with the regular diet of this. So more intake of calcium, less intake of water may lead to this renal calculi, kidney stones. Kidney stones, if they are very smaller in size, they'll go for a medication in order to remove it. If it is somewhat larger size, they go for a lithotripsy phenomenon where they use sound waves in breaking down, or else surgery. Either medication, drugs, or lithotripsy, or the surgery. The last but not the least is a glomerulonephritis. The name itself sounding, it is an inflammation of glomeruli. What happens? You know, glomeruli is actually the unit where the blood gets filtered up. And as it gets filtered up, you know, well, here it is, if it gets inflamed, the pores, I told you, it leaves a small slit pores. The pores will get widened. By this, the plasma proteins and all will be moved out. I mean, there will be even hemoglobin, RBC will come out. Hematuria, hemoglobinuria, pyuria, like these words we'll use due to this glomerulonephritis, which is also called as a Bright's disease. Bright's disease it's called as. So this is about the disorders of the excretory system, guys. It's the time to wrap. And before leaving this session, I would like to remind you once again the importance, and already I said in the meanwhile, where the last previous NEET questions faced by your seniors and I mean the students of the old batches. So it's very important. I hope you enjoyed starting from this, how your kidney is located, where it's functioning, how it's function, how it's functioning, how it's regulated, and the happiest process, micturition, the releasing of urine out. So I think that you are enjoying if you connected. If you connected continuously, you will enjoy it. If you watch on and off, if you are not only any class is not mandatory to one, it's mandatory to all. It's not particularly to one thing. It should, if you continuously concentrate and you come across all these things with attentive manner, it's a very easy. The zoology is not easy, but it can made easy, guys. I hope you understood. Thanks for watching the video. That's all for today's session, guys. Meet you in the next video with the other unit of human physiology with the Josh again with some other interesting aspects.